A government shutdown occurs when Congress fails to pass the necessary appropriations bills or a continuing resolution to fund federal agencies. Because the government cannot spend money without legal authorization per the Anti-Deficiency Act, all non-accepted functions, meaning those not directly related to protecting human life or property, must cease. The immediate and quantifiable cost is borne by the federal workforce. Hundreds of thousands of civilian employees are furloughed, leading to a direct and immediate loss of wages, which the Congressional Budget Office estimates at hundreds of millions of dollars daily. Even accepted essential personnel, like TSA agents and Border Patrol, are forced to work without pay, creating severe financial strain and morale issues. While federal employees are typically granted back pay once the shutdown ends, this does not apply to federal contractors whose lost income is permanent. Crucially, the shutdown acts as a systemic attack on the nation's grant-making and regulatory infrastructure. Agencies like the National Institutes of Health, the Department of Energy, and the National Science Foundation halt the processing of new grants and the oversight of existing ones. This freeze on funding ripples through the economy, disrupting scientific research, delaying critical infrastructure projects, and crippling local services that rely on federal pass-through grants. Reasons and consequences. Reasons for shutdowns. The primary reason for these funding lapses is political and ideological gridlock, partisan disagreement. Deep ideological divides between the two major political parties often make it impossible to agree on spending levels, policy riders, or the allocation of funds to specific programs like border security or climate change initiatives. Strategic leverage. Congressional factions increasingly use the threat of a shutdown, or the shutdown itself, as a high-stakes bargaining chip to force concessions from the opposing party or the White House on non-budgetary issues. Timing of appropriations. The U.S. fiscal year ends on September 30th. When Congress fails to meet this deadline due to protracted negotiations, a lapse in funding is the legal default. Consequences. The consequences are severe, both economically and institutionally. Economic drag. Furloughed workers and unpaid contractors immediately reduce consumer spending. Delays in business loans and permits stall private sector investments. Congressional Budget Office analyses of previous shutdowns have shown they shave measurable points off quarterly GDP growth. Crippled grant pipeline. Universities, state and local governments, and nonprofits relying on federal grants cannot receive new funds, pay researchers, or launch vital community programs, effectively stalling innovation and social support services. Regulatory backlogs. Agencies like the Food and Drug Administration and Environmental Protection Agency curtail inspections and approvals. This slows the introduction of new drugs and products, creates regulatory uncertainty for businesses, and poses risks to public safety. Damage to national security. While essential defense functions continue, the National Nuclear Security Administration has, in past shutdowns, warned of critically low funding for maintaining nuclear weapons safety and oversight. Non-accepted activities within the Department of Defense are also curtailed, impacting readiness and long-term planning. Prediction and solutions. Prediction. Unfortunately, the current trend of increasing partisan polarization suggests that government shutdowns will remain a recurring feature of U.S. governance. Unless fundamental rules or political incentives change, the practice of using the budget deadline as an all-or-nothing negotiating tool will persist. Future shutdowns will likely be characterized by increased duration, as political lines harden and a willingness to endure longer shutdowns for ideological victories rises, and greater economic volatility as markets increasingly price in shutdown risk, leading to more frequent bouts of economic uncertainty. Solutions. Meaningful solutions require both procedural reform and a shift in political culture. Automatic continuing resolution. Congress could adopt a mechanism that automatically triggers a short-term continuing resolution at current spending levels if appropriations bills are not passed by the deadline. This removes the immediate threat of a shutdown, which is the political leverage forcing negotiations to proceed without creating economic havoc. Bipartisan Budget Commission. Establishing a nonpartisan commission with a high voting threshold to recommend a budget framework could depoliticize the initial spending targets, forcing both sides toward a reasonable consensus before the deadline. no back pay for Congress. A purely symbolic but potentially impactful measure is to stop paying members of Congress during a government shutdown. While this does not affect their personal wealth significantly, it directly links their employment status to the operational status of the government, which may increase the urgency to pass a budget. Implementing these solutions would transform the budgeting process from a zero-sum nuclear war into a manageable political negotiation, safeguarding jobs, grants, and the essential functions of the federal government.